Welcome to the Dying Breed podcast. I'm Caleb, and I'm here with Earl Watters. He is a Chinook pilot fighting fire, and you have 20,000 hours in a helicopter.
Correct, yep.
And you've been doing this how many years?
Over 30 years.
Over 30 years.
Flying, yep.
So I don't know about everybody else, but I'm pumped. So let's start. Where did you start? Like where did...
Well, so I went to flight school in Sacramento, California, where I learned to fly. Became an instructor, worked there a little while. I then took a job. I went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, working for the Army as a civilian flight instructor, teaching the Army pilots to fly. We taught initial entry rotary wing there, so we put their first 60 hours on the pilots and basically taught them how to fly a helicopter. So I did that for a while, kind of all over the United States. I ended up in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I worked for a company for quite a while. We got into animal capture and firefighting. That's kind of where I started getting into the firefighting and animal capture in the winter. And construction, we pretty much do everything you can imagine with a helicopter. I've pretty much been involved.
Because you fly the Chinook and you fly the airplane.
I fly the Sky Crane, Hueys, smaller ones, Jet Rangers, long range Hughes 500, pretty much almost all the aircraft. Some of the more recent, EC aircraft, I don't have much time in, just, little bits of time, but never working. Usually a lot of Bell aircraft, and then some of the heavies, the Sky Crane and the Chinook.
What's your favorite aircraft?
My favorite right now is the Chinook.
You just in love with it.
I love it. It's big, it's fast, it's just got a lot of power. The capabilities are unbelievable. It makes you smile every time you fly it. The redundancy is something I'm later on in my career, so I appreciate the redundancy of two engines, two flight control hydraulic systems. There's just redundancy for everything, so if you have a problem.
Is it a little like the A-10? Like it's got a backup system for a backup system?
It does. I mean, it's robust. It's pretty tough. I don't think it's as tough as the Sky Crane helicopter.
Really?
Yeah. I think that's a lot more bulletproof than this thing here. You got to fly this a little bit more delicate, but it's definitely capable as far as speed and what it lifts compared to the Crane. This will outlift the Sky Crane.
Really?
And it's also faster, also burns less fuel.
Why is the Sky Crane tougher?
I think it's the way it's designed. I mean, if you look at it, it's like a tank. Everything is just stout. They've logged with them for years. They've logged with these as well for years. These develop quite a few cracks. Cranes develop cracks too, but I think with just my experience being around both of them, I feel that the Crane can take that logging type work a little bit better than the Chinook can. But this can definitely lift more, faster. It's quite the capable.
Because you were talking earlier that when you guys are going on a longer trip, you have is it a Colorado?
Chevy Colorado. With a 4-door truck.
With a trailer that you put your bucket on, and Correct. You just drive it right in this bay.
We drive it right on in. We strap it down. We close the ramp, so now we got a truck and a trailer in here, and we just take off. So if we're going from here to California for a fire, we'll land. We'll pull it out, hook up our bucket, and then we have transportation now because our vehicle's there. Because all of our support equipment is usually a day or two behind us. So now we're self-contained. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
What is the most scariest moment in your flying career?
Whew. Well, I've had quite a few of them.
Have you crashed?
I have, yeah, a couple of times, as a matter of fact. So those weren't probably the scariest. The scariest moment I think I had is I was flying a Bell 205 helicopter. It's like a Huey.
Right.
Looks just like a Huey. It's a civilian version of a Huey. And I was fighting fire with it in Page, Arizona. We were dipping out of Lake Powell, and the fire was up on top of Navajo Mountain. Navajo Mountain's 10,000 feet. It's one of the 4 sacred mountains of the Navajo. And so I was in the dip site in the lake, pulling the full bucket out, and I had a tail rotor malfunction. So basically what happens is the pitch change link broke on the tail rotor. So my ability to move pedal to keep the nose straight and keep the aircraft from spinning was gone. So I started spinning. And the first 2 rotations were unbelievably fast. The helicopter just went boom, boom, that quick. When I long line, when I'm leaning out, you got to lean out the seat there. So I can't wear the shoulder harnesses because they prevent me from getting out. So only thing I wear is a lap belt. So during that situation, being the 205 has a long arm away from the center of mass, so the cockpit's pretty far out from the rotation of the mass. So when I was spinning around it, the centrifugal force was unbelievable. So it pinned me into that bubble with my head, and I was pretty much stuck in that while we were spinning to the right. And it was just me in there by myself. And so Murphy's Law, we had a pilot that flew that aircraft on contracts, and he had accidentally hit the pinky button that released the belly and dropped the bucket a couple of times. So we had a couple releases. So our crew chief changed the button from the pinky button to the thumb and the pinky to get rid of the long line and hook. So I was doing relief on the helicopter. You spend your whole career with your pinky button releasing the belly hook. Well, so now I'm spinning and I'm hitting that pinky button. Nothing's happening.
Holy shit.
So the line isn't going away and I'm spinning like crazy. So I went ahead and realized that, okay, this ain't working. Now in a Huey or a 205, there is a manual cable release. It's a little square piece of metal right directly between your two pedals. So it requires you to take 1 foot off a pedal and then you push that and then that releases the hook. But I was spinning so fast and so hard and I had full pedal and I felt if I took my feet off the pedals, I could possibly spin faster. This is just what's going through my mind at that time, right? And so I'm spinning, so the next best thing is just to go ahead and get rid of the water, get all the weight. So I punched out all the water, and of course that helped. Now all the weight went away, and I was able to take reduced power, and now the helicopter spin was less. I mean, I still spun about 35 times, I think, through this whole ordeal to give you an idea of me spinning. And I'm over a big bay in Lake Powell, so there's nowhere to go but in the lake if I'm going to crash. So I didn't want to be pinned in the helicopter and drowned, and there was no way I'm going in the lake in my mind. So I'm spinning, got rid of the water, and once I slowed the rotation, I was able then to get out of the bubble and sit up. And then I kind of got my wits about me, and I realized, it's the thumb and the pinky on this. We changed it. And so then I thought, well, if I punch the bucket off in the lake, I'm going to have to go swimming for it. My boss is going to be mad. I mean, there's just the stupid things to think of, right? And I have music playing, and I'll never forget this. It's Glenn Miller's Chattanooga Choo Choo is playing in my helmet while all this is going. So every time I hear that song, I get PTSD. Yeah. So Chattanooga Choo Choo's playing. I'm spinning. I got rid of the water. Now I sit up, and I'm like, all right, I'm not going in the lake. So I decided to fly the helicopter across this bay to an island. I could see an island. So I'm doing what's called pirouettes. As the helicopter's spinning, I'm getting it to move while I'm going in that direction. And that takes a lot of flight control movement. So I learn as I'm going, the faster I'm going, the slower the rotation gets when the tail goes into the wind. It's got this weather vaning capability. That's the reason for this vertical fin on the helicopter. So then I figured, well, I could possibly get this thing to fly straight and then maybe not crash. So I took a chance. I just grabbed a bunch of power, which made me climb. It gave me a little more altitude. I went up to about 300 feet at that point. Punched the bucket off on the island. I got rid of that prior to climbing. So I did set the bucket down on the island.
So you didn't have to...
I didn't have to go swimming for it. I didn't have to explain why it was in the lake, although I don't think it would have mattered. And then as I climbed, I went ahead and reduced power as I was moving. And sure enough, I got the helicopter to fly sideways. So I did this big circle flying sideways, and then I came into the island, rolled the throttle off, and came to a screeching halt in the sand, and nothing happened. So then on the radio's going off. Now I hear fire, fire, fire. So I think I'm on fire. So I shut the helicopter off. I jump out because there's other helicopters behind me. Well, there was a young kid and his girlfriend were camping on this island. And later talking to him, he saw me spinning out of control coming. He thought I was going to crash on him. They had a little campfire going with their coffee pot. So he jumped up, kicked everything over, caught the grass on fire. Now the fire is burning to the helicopter.
Oh my God.
So I just survived this helicopter. I did not wreck it. I did not destroy it. Now fire is going to burn the helicopter. So I'm trying to get away from the fire. So luckily, my compadres there came through, and it was a beautiful show. I watched all these helicopters come in and do nice trail drops down and I was like the biggest fan. I was cheering, and they put the fire out, a little bit of black left over, and then now I'm stuck on this island. So they asked what I needed. I said, you probably better send a mechanic, a ladder, and a new pair of underwear. Yeah, and that's pretty much was one of the scariest moments I've had. I've had quite a few, but that probably ranks as the spinning is not very comfortable.
So my granddad he actually died in a plane. He was
sorry to hear.
Yeah, thanks. He crashed actually out here at the airport in Craigmont, and did single tanker. That your profession in general is known to be fairly dangerous as a whole.
It is. I mean, firefighting is dangerous inherently because of the stuff we're doing. Everything is in a hurry, right? So you've got that to overcome. Everybody wants to be in a big hurry, and then that's when you overlook things, or you go bombing into a canyon without looking at it properly instead of just slowing down, taking your time. That's where wires are going to be, and now you got reduced visibility, and there's all the stress upon you. So yeah, it definitely increases the level of risk, but there are a lot more dangerous things that I've done than firefighting.
So what's the more dangerous stuff in your opinion?
So we do a lot of construction. We'll build towers. So if you could imagine setting a tower on bolts and then stacking another piece on top of that and another piece on top of that. So you have 4 guys that are climbing up the tower while you're doing it, and you could have a 10,000 pound load, a 20,000 pound load holding over the top of somebody. If it just swings a little bit due to wind, it could crush them, kill them. So I lose a lot of sleep at night prior to those jobs because you just think about everything that could possibly go wrong, right? And of course, we train for it, and we prepare for it. We do as much preparation as we can to make it as safe as possible. Some other stuff that's equally as dangerous to me, as well as my passengers, is all the animal capture. There's been several incidences where net guns have been fired into main rotor blades.
Oh, shit.
On the skids, I've had that happen. There's just all kinds of things that can go bad. The probability of you shooting yourself down is incredibly high.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So with the capture stuff, you do that in the winter.
In the winter, correct. Yeah, because you don't want to run animals in the summer. It's too hot.
Craziest story there.
Whew.
And I'm sure there's plenty.
Boy. Yeah, there's a pretty good story. We were working some bighorn sheep for the Navajo Nation out of Bluff, Utah. And we were trying to capture some bighorn sheep, looking for like class 3 rams. So that's, a 2-3-year-old ram, not quite a full curl. And they wanted to put radio colors on them. So we found some rams, and we were trying to net the sheep. And a boss of mine at the time was flying, and we weren't real successful. I was flying, and my boss was net gunning. We weren't real successful at that first moment of trying to catch some sheep. So we swapped roles. So I said, you know what? I've been doing this a long time. I've never net gunned, but I'm going to get in the back, and we're going to go catch some sheep. So I took the net gun over and shot a sign. Just to, boom, shot it. Yeah, I think I can do this. So we get out, we get 2 or 3 sheep going pretty good. So we're pretty successful. Then we run into some sheep on a ledge. This 300-foot ledge, sheep are running back and forth. So we're going to net these sheep. So they're running back and forth, and of course I can't net the sheep unless they're running and they're in an open area where the net can close on them to catch them. If I just shoot the net at the hill, it's just going to hit the hill. It's not going to catch them. So we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. So my boss says, all right, I'm going to put you down on that ledge. And again, we're 300 feet up. I've just got a little monkey harness on my back holding me in. And I'm thinking, that's pretty close to the hills. I'm thinking this big rock here. He's thinking this rock here. But I'm the gunner. He's the pilot, so I'm letting him do his thing. So we start hovering into the hill, and I'm kind of looking at it thinking, we're awfully close. And I'm standing on the skid now. I've released my safety harness, and I'm holding onto the windscreen. I'm ready to step onto this ledge. And just about that time, the blades now make contact with the cliff.
Oh my God.
Whack, 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 whack. So the tips of the rotor blades are like 672 feet per second. They're bullets. Right. So we've got small pieces of granite and rock coming from the cliff that is now bullets. They are going through the windscreen. Later we had holes through the windscreen of the helicopter, through the nose.
Oh, geez.
One kind of bounced off my helmet, rang my ears. We had one hit my boss in the leg, and it was nasty. So I jumped. I just jumped to this ledge, did the old Hail Mary, and so now I'm laying on this ledge, and I can hear the blades going, and he flies away, gets down to the bottom, shuts down, the helicopter's just shaking, and so I'm sitting on this ledge, and I'm kind of angry. And he's yelling at me, "Hey, how are you going to get down?" Of course, I'm like, I have no idea. And to make things worse, I'd had a motorcycle accident. So I had compound fractures on both of the arches of my feet. So my feet were still bleeding at this time. I had some open wounds. Geez. So I wasn't in really good shape for hiking. And my boss at the time had hit a sign in Mexico on a motorcycle and knocked himself out and broke his collarbone. So his collarbone was really messed up. We were in a bad shape in the nastiest terrain you could imagine possible along the Colorado River. So he says, "All right, I'm going to come up and get you." And I'm thinking, "Oh gosh, this is going to be bad." The helicopter's, damaged. So goes to try to start it, and of course it's shaken and it doesn't start. So that's not a good idea. So now I cut my harness all up into pieces that I had. I had little, so I could tie it, and I tied it to the net gun. And then I shimmied myself down this one area where I could get down. And then, of course, I had to drop. And my feet were hurting. So I dropped. And so I made it. It took me about, maybe 2 hours or so to get down. And then we're trying to figure out what we're going to do. And I said, well, let's go down. We can't go up. So we're hiking out now the Colorado River. So we get down to the edge and it cliffs out. Now there's just nothing but water. Starting to snow because it's in the wintertime. It's cold. We're wearing our helmets because we don't have beanies or anything. It's starting to snow. I grabbed the ELT out of the helicopter, that's emergency locator transmitter. I'm just going to turn it on. We've got a place to land right here. Well, let's go get some firewood. Life flight will land here and pick us up. We're golden, right? So just about that time, here comes some rafters. Now, these are instructors that work at this place that do rafting in the summer. They're in the winter training each other. Yeah. So the rapids are just, we're talking like class 5s. It's unbelievably rough. And they come in, hey, help. They come in, hey, what's going on? So, well, our helicopter broke down. We're stuck here. Can you take us out? They're on their way through to Mexican Hat. So they said, well, you can get on. We don't have any life vests. And it's cold. They're all wearing wetsuits. And they're like, if you guys want to jump in, it's better than all alternative. So now I've never been on a river rafting expedition. So here we are in our flight suits, helmets, fingers under the ropes. We're holding on for dear life going down the rapids. And we're soaking wet. I'm freezing. I got the shakes. We make it out. We go back to the hotel. We're trying to figure out what we're going to do at this point. So at that point, the decision was made to go to Albuquerque, get our other helicopter. We have a big 205 helicopter. We fly out, grab the helicopter out of the canyon, long line it out, and put it on a trailer, and then drive it out. But that's one of my crazy moments, and I wasn't even flying, so it was crazy.
What in the back of your mind? Why'd you jump instead of?
I thought the helicopter was going down.
That's fair.
The blades are hitting the hill. I figured it was going to be ugly. With me on the skids, I figured I was going to be ejected, and it's just 300 feet down. So I figured I was dead if I didn't jump. So I jumped. I wasn't close. We weren't far away, is what I meant to say. The skid was almost touching the ground when the blades hit. So I was within a foot to the ledge. So I just took that point I had nothing holding me in the helicopter at that point. So I did not want to ride it down. So I jumped and survived that way. And we had a good bonding moment. I think that's the closest we ever bonded after that, where we were walking and talking, and it was definitely.
So do you guys still fly together?
I don't. He has retired. He's working somewhere in Albuquerque, but I owe a lot to this guy because he gave me a chance when I started, and just was an incredible guy to work for. But we definitely had that experience together that we're going to take to our grave.
Oh my God.
And I'm sure there was a few things that were said that I didn't share here that that we did.
You know, the beautiful the thing that I kind of love about the podcasting stuff is that we can be a little more uncensored.
We can.
We can because we don't have to. I mean, while it goes up on YouTube, any of that kind of stuff I send to Spotify, and I can imagine that when you were sitting on that cliff.
Yeah, I was steaming. I didn't know how to get down. I literally walked back and forth for an hour trying to figure out how to get down, and I just could not figure out how to get down.
And then the boat ride in the winter, never been on a rafting trip.
That was my first time. No life preserver, no helmet. Didn't know what we were just hanging on. They had paddles, and it was an interesting ride.
So when I cowboyed as a kid, they always why are we riding in the rocks? Well, you hold on better.
Yeah, exactly.
So I
You're
Facebook,
yeah, okay.
I Facebook stalked you a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So because I was like, oh, who's this guy? And I'm like looking. So you gunfight?
Yes, I do.
Oh, wow.
All right. So when I lived in New Mexico, I joined the New Mexico Gunfighters. So there's a story behind that. So I grew up in California when I was a kid, and we would go to Knott's Berry Farm. So I was born in Fullerton, California, down by Disneyland, Knott's Berry Farm, all that. Right. So as a kid, we'd go to Knott's Berry Farm. They had a western town, and they had this old steam train that came through town, and they had these outlaws with blanks that would rob the train. And when I was a kid, I was fascinated with it. I did not want to ride any of the rides. I wanted to go watch the outlaws rob the train. I was terrified of them, and I'd always remember hugging up to my dad. Anytime they came around, I was terrified, but I was so fascinated by these guys. So I just had this bug. So fast forward in life, we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico with my wife. We've been married 30 years now. And at that point, we were probably married 10, 15 years, something like that. And we're in Old Town, Albuquerque, and we're watching the New Mexico Gunfighters do shows in Old Town. And I said, oh my God, they're doing shows. I want to watch this. We watched it. We got done. I looked at my wife. I said, I've always wanted to do this. She goes, I've been married to you for how long? I had no idea you wanted to. I said, I want to do this. So I went over and talked to the guy. I said, what do I need to do to join? So I joined the Gunfighters. They didn't have a gun spinner, or they didn't have anybody that did.
You do the twirling.
Yes, I spin guns.
Really?
And they didn't have anybody that did these theatrical pyrotechnics. I mean, I wanted to bring it to the next level.
Right.
So I contacted the fire marshal in New Mexico. Had no idea what I was doing. I said, hey, I want to do theatrical pyrotechnics for our shows, I want explosions. Right. So he talked to me about what I had to do, what was legal limits and all this. So we did that, and we incorporated that into the show. We have detonators and transmitters that make things go off during the show. And of course, I learned to gun spin, taught myself, and spun guns. So we would always go to Tombstone, Arizona for these big events. El Dorado in Tombstone is the anniversary of the OK Corral shootout.
Right.
It happened in October 26, 1881, as a matter of fact. And we would always go to this event because it was huge. All these other gunfighters, and everybody wanted to do their shows. Gunfight on the streets of Tombstone, right? That was the thing to do. So I met the owner of Old Tombstone Western Town. His name's Lee McKechnie, and he did gunfights in Tombstone since like the late 70s. They had been doing shows there, and their script is unbelievable. It's a comedy gunfight, so it's slapstick comedy, kind of like Blazing Saddles type deal.
Nice.
So it's the only comedy show in town. You can see history. There's a couple historical reenactments, and then there's the OK Corral shootout, and they do some history, but most of it's kind of follows the movie Tombstone. Right. A lot of the lines and stuff are almost exact to the movie Tombstone. So I decided that watching it, I met him and I said, hey, can I join your show? So he started putting me in the shows every time I went down there. So I said, well, when I move here, I want to do that. So as soon as I moved there, I started working there. So we do gunfights 7 days a week.
Really?
Yeah, we do 3 shows a day, 365 days a year. And so when I'm home, I strap on all my cowboy stuff, my spurs, except I don't ride a horse into town. I ride a one-wheel. It's an electric one-wheel skateboard.
Gosh.
And there's a lot of pictures rolling around the internet of this cowboy in Tombstone on this one-wheel, spinning guns while he's riding it and all his gear, right? I do that in parades and stuff. I ride the one-wheel. But I take it to and from work every day. I only live, I live within a half mile of work.
So funny funny. The small world, I guess. So I did cowboy fast draw. I competed in cowboy fast draw. I do gun twirling.
Oh,
and I taught I do gun spinning. And I doubt I'm probably as good, but I again taught myself, I can toss it over the shoulder and catch it.
Yep.
And I have 2 different rigs. I have a Ruger Montados and the Ruger Vaquero.
Okay. Do you do the 4 3/4 or?
So I have both.
Okay.
I actually
prefer to spin better.
I think the longer barrel.
Okay.
I think not the 5, but the 4 and
the 4 3/4.
Yeah. The Ruger Montado only has like a 3-inch barrel.
Yeah.
And the balance to me, I can spin them. I just don't think they have quite that.
Yeah, the 4 3/4 to me that's what I carry. I carry the Ruger Vaqueros.
Yes.
Those are my spinners. I got a lot of guns, but those are the ones I spin.
Some people say they don't like the Rugers because they're heavier.
They're very heavy.
They're heavy.
They're 3 pounds.
I know. They're a beast.
But I have no problem spinning.
But they're indestructible.
I can wagon wheel and flip them. Yeah, I do both hands.
Yep, me. Yep, same.
And the hard ones, one gun one way, one the other way.
Yeah.
So, anyways, back to the old Tombstone. So I do the comedy shows, and I love it. I do it for the kids, the laughs. It's just kind of cool.
Dude, that's so cool.
You dress up. We do makeup, make it look like we've been in fights, and of course we cover ourselves with dirt, and we look like we just rode off the streets. Although I stepped off my one wheel. And people always say, well, that's not period correct. So I always say, well, you saw the movie Back to the Future 3, right? that's what I'm wearing.
And I did cowboy mounted shooting as well.
Okay, that's different.
And it's funny because the fast draw side, I think, plays, like for me, at one time when I was in practice, I could hit a tin can twice before it hit the ground, like with a 6 gun. And I do the John Wayne.
Oh yeah, of course.
With the
lever action.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god.
Fill your hands, you son of a bitch.
Dude, like I grew up kind of old school, and I think that's what started this whole podcast journey. I grew up watching Roy Rogers and Gene Autry.
I grew up in Apple Valley, California,
right? Where Roy Rogers Ranch was.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think a lot of kids today, I mean, those were my models, my life models, my character. Like those were the guys I looked up to. And
we've lost that.
We have.
We don't have a lot of guys like
no.
that. Yeah.
And the masculinity, like as a whole, is a good thing.
It is.
Boys are supposed to be protectors. They're supposed to be, and so like the fact that you're bringing that out, you're bringing that to kids. I mean, that's huge.
Yeah. Well, I just remember me as a kid, right. And I see it in their eyes when I'm doing the show and I watch them. Especially sometimes because I play a bad guy a lot, and sometimes you scare them, and I see it. But I remember I'm that little kid looking at me, and it brings back. I don't know. I get little goosebumps about it because that's the way I grew up, and and I have a son and a daughter, and I've tried to pass it on to my kids.
How old are your kids?
So my son is 25 now. My daughter's 23.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So being gone as much as you are, my dad was on the road for most of my life. What would you tell dads out there that are trying to balance a work life with a family life? What? Oh
man, it's hard. But if you already have kids and then you are looking for this life, it's pretty difficult. I was fortunate enough I was already flying when I met my wife, so I was already doing this work, so my kids know nothing other than that. Right. So as they were born and realized what was going on, they knew Dad left, and then Dad came home. Sometimes I'd be gone all summer, sometimes I wouldn't. So they knew that was the life. It was very hard. It was very hard on them because I would miss birthdays and all these events, and sometimes it'd just eat at you when you're gone. And then you come home, sometimes your kids are mad at you. Right. They don't realize that you're providing it. Later in life, I've had them say that they realize what I was doing now, which is very soothing to me because I didn't have that then. And even my wife, with the profession I did, it's not like I was going and I was working in an office somewhere doing something. I'm flying, it's dangerous. There's a possibility I don't come home. Right. So that was very rough on my wife. And the hard part for me, the demons I had, was that I would leave and I would say I may not come home. So I had all these, rituals I would do before I left, and I liked things in those places because I knew when I was gone, to me that reassured me I was coming home, because I had to get this where I left it and this and that.
Right.
It gave me a purpose to be there, although my family did as well, but those are things in your mind that, and it was very rough, and the jobs you would do, there were so many close calls, and you can't tell your wife about them because that makes it even harder. So now you're keeping it amongst yourself. I have a pool of friends that are pilots that we talk about stuff like that. So yeah, it's dangerous. But as far as looking to get into that, if you have kids, yeah, it's very difficult. You are going to fight battles that you never knew you had, because it really wears on you, and you got to be able to handle that stress.
I imagine it takes a special kind of woman, especially to.
It does. We've been married almost 30 years. We're 29 years and one time. So this has been good, but we laugh about it because I think this on-off schedule has really helped our marriage, because I'm home for 12 days. She's sick of me. All right, it's time for you to go to work. Kicks me out. I go to work. And then when you come home, it's like a honeymoon again, right?
Right.
Come home with a dirty laundry bag and, and a honeymoon, and it's exciting. And then, you're ready to leave again. And sometimes I'll bring my wife with me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Do you think with your kids and your wife that quality over quantity where time is concerned?
For sure. Take advantage of the time that you have, for sure. Because every time I was home, you fight the battles too, because I traveled all the time at work. All I wanted to do was go home. So now when I'm home, my family, all they want to do is go because I'm home. So it just pulls you away from your household, but you're with your family. So I would embrace that. We traveled, we did all the things we would do, and then I would leave. And that was even rougher on you, because all you wanted to do was be home. I had a workshop. I wanted to do things, build things, and
My uncle flies 747s. I told you that earlier, and he'll talk about that because him and his wife have been together for I don't know how many years, but he'll say the same. He's like, I do not want to leave the house. Like
you don't.
He's like, I've been in, like, he'll fly from Alaska to Seoul to Japan to Australia and then back to and he's like, I spend
nope. Yeah, all you want to do is go home.
And it's a rough life. That kind of travel is hard.
It is. Now, the positive side. So you get to see the world. There's things that I've seen. Everywhere I go, I'm flying in a helicopter. People would die to see that kind of stuff. So, and I spent my whole life like that, even through the U.S. But there's so many things I missed on the ground. So now we have motorcycles. My wife and I do a lot of traveling. We just did a recent trip. We bought a couple BMW motorcycles, and we left.
They're nice.
They are amazing. So we drove from the border of Mexico down by Douglas, Arizona, and our plan was to go all the way to the Canadian border and then back to the border home in 30 days. So we ended up making it to Boise. We had a change of plans because some things changed with family, but we had a 30-day trip. We put almost 6,000 miles on the bike, and we saw all these things from the ground we went through Yellowstone, which I fought fire there. I've seen it from there. Never been on the ground. I stood in front of Old Faithful. Never seen it. I've flown over it 1,000,000 times. And then we go to Mount Rushmore. I've flown by Mount Rushmore, but we saw it from the ground. So all these things I'm seeing, and it's a complete different perspective.
Right.
And I'm older, so I'm appreciating that, right? When you're a kid, I remember one time, I was flying my family. I was going to Yosemite. We had a Yosemite contract, the Parks and Wildlife contract there. I'm flying the 205 from Albuquerque, New Mexico to Yosemite, to Crane Flats, where the contract's going to start. I've got my wife and kids in the helicopter, and we're flying through the Rockies by Mount Whitney. Most beautiful country, snow-covered peak. Unbelievable. I look back, both of my kids are asleep. Dead asleep. Trying to wake them up. You guys are missing something that's just incredible. They're sleeping. They don't care. Yeah. So
it's crazy. So how did you meet your wife?
Oh, so I met her. I was living in Las Vegas, Nevada. I had moved there to fly, doing some flying tours and stuff. But I was also, because I was struggling early on. This was early 90s. Late 80s, early 90s. So I was struggling, early in the career and making them eating top ramen. So I would, for part-time money, I would rollerblade on the strip. We had a stunt team, and we did ramps and stuff down by Wet and Wild when they had amusement parks there. So we decided to all go rollerblading on the Strip, and she was rollerblading with some friends, and we met in front of the Mirage, the volcano. And that's where we met, because she was born and raised there. And I only had lived there for a couple of years, but that's where I met her, and it was rollerblading. And then after that, we just hit it off. And
you mentioned something right there, and you said you were struggling and eating top ramen. And I see a lot of kids today, my generation and the generations coming up, we want success without trial and without work. You're 30 years in this industry. You've probably been hungry. You've put in the hours, extra time.
Yeah, I've earned it. You will get nothing given to you in life. I mean, you've got to get out. You've got to make it happen. You cannot believe the amount of doors that were slammed in my face trying to get into this. I mean, I was washing helicopters and polishing the hangar floors just to be around it, just so I could, because I couldn't get a job, didn't have the hours. And I did, I was cleaning off. I was doing everything I could possibly do to be around it, to get in the door. And I mean, it's tough, just like anything in life.
Right.
You got to earn it, right? And nothing's given to you.
And it's you're not going to win the lotto. I think that attitude of I'm somehow some magical wand is going to wave, and I'm going to get to do what I dream to do. You got here because you put in the hours,
hard work. Yep, a lot of hardship, a lot of tears, a lot of sweat to get where you're at.
And just because one door closes doesn't mean you got to pound on the door sometimes, a couple times before.
Yeah, and to give you a little thought on that, so. Because of those hardships I had when I was trying to get into it. I mean, I'll give you a story. I was out of high school, I was riding my bicycle, and I wanted to fly helicopters. I saw a life flight helicopter sitting at the hospital, and the pilot, old gray-haired guy, sitting in it with his feet up, he's reading a book. And I'm looking through the fence. Hey, I think I was 17 at the time. Hey, can I come over and look at the helicopter? I really want to be a pilot. And he kind of looks over his shoulder at me, goes back to reading. Hey, I'm yelling again. Turned around, I'm busy, kid. Go away. And I was thinking, man, that was... So that really put something into me. I said, you know what? If I make it, I'm not going to do that. So to give you an idea, I mean, the followers on Facebook, just because these fires, were unbelievable here. So I've had so many messages with people saying, hey, I want to get into this. And you know what? I've called every one of these people.
Wow.
And I've talked to these guys on the phone, and I say, look, I always said that I would never do that. If you need help, I will do everything I can to help you, because I know what it was like to go through that. I even had, if people come out to the helicopter and want a tour, it's at the end of the day, I'm sweating. I've flown all day on fires, and I'm ready to go to the hotel. And there's a kid standing at that fence saying, hey, can I come look at that helicopter? I'm going to set my bags down. I'm going to walk over there, get him. I'm going to put him in the cockpit, and I'm going to show him the helicopter. I've done that from day one in my career, and I will continue to do it. So I will help anybody. I know what it's like and how discouraging it is when you hit that door,
In my industry, it's kind of interesting because my mentor, so shoeing horses, and he's a journeyman. He said when he started, this would have been 30 years ago, kind of the same experience. He hey man, how do you do what you do? And the guy's like, I had to figure it out. You figure it out. And like that kind of attitude. And then he's like, I'm never going to do that to someone. And now I'm seeing in our industry, like a lot of these guys they'll tell you, they're like, we're on our way out. We're they're in their 60s, getting ready to get out of the shoeing industry, or they're just not doing as many horses. Yeah. Their goal is to pass it on to the next generation. And I think, like talking to you, you're trying to keep this alive. Because what's the average age of pilots on something like this?
I've seen some guys, as old as 70s not retired. Right. They're still doing it and probably shouldn't be doing it. But typically, most guys get in their 60s and they want to be done. I enjoy it. It's an incredible employment opportunity, and I wouldn't change it, but sometimes it's a job.
Right.
So you still get to the point where I don't want to go out.
Right.
And the older you get, now I'm finding I'm 57. So I'm pushing 60. I'm thinking 6 more years for me.
Right.
And I don't mind being an instructor. And I'm a training captain here for Billings, so I try to pass on what I've acquired over the years to some of the younger
Are some of the young guys coming up? Are they...
Well, we get a lot of co-pilots that are new. That we've had as little just on another machine this year. I had a guy that only had a couple hundred hours, so it was his first job after getting his commercial license, and he got airsick the whole time fighting the fire. It was that big fire in Ruidoso that burnt through Ruidoso and the town. So I was on that and had him, and I flew 3 or 4 days on it, and he was sick the whole time, puking. But we get those new guys, so yeah, I try to.
What was the reason? Like, what? I mean, obviously she's flown a little bit, but what's causing it?
Firefighting is so rough. I mean, it can be. You can make it smooth, but it can be rough. So most of the time, helicopters are always dropping on backsides of ridges where airplanes can't get. Where tight structure protections, tight working with guys. So you're always on the backside of ridges. There's turbulence. There's smoke. The helicopter's moving. It shakes. When you start putting a lot of weight in the helicopter, you almost think the world's coming to an end. Everything vibrates so bad. I mean, sometimes the gauges and the instrument panel are shaking so bad you can't even read them. That's just the environment in here. And when you've never done it and you're in here, I mean, I've had people just go white because they're scared that they think we're crashing, but we're not. That's just the machine reacting what we're doing. So because they don't have anything to gauge by. Right. So there's that. The smoke. Incredibly hot. We talked about the heat. Right. So we're 130 degrees in that cockpit. So you're just dripping in sweat. There's no airflow in your face. It's moving all over. It's like a wild ride. So yeah, motion sickness is people. But I bet
it's a rush, isn't it?
sometimes it is. Yeah, sometimes it is. Your hair's on fire and you're just going a million miles.
And I think whatever you choose, like especially, it's got to be a little bit of an addiction.
Oh, it is. And then the more you do it, like the more you want to do more. And then like all of the bucket work I do, I like a long line and bucket because I can be more creative. I have all the names for these drops. I've invented these in my mind, right? I'm sure other guys do it, but in my mind, I've invented these.
So what was some of the names?
Well, so I have a Picasso. I call it a Picasso because it's like painting. So for instance, say somebody cuts down a tree and now you have a log on the ground. Say the log's 50 feet. Well, we carry a lot of water. So if you're moving, 20 knots and you drop across it, you're going to have more water than the length of the log. So you'll drop water, stop, and then you got to circle around, come back again, and drop on the log again and do the same thing. So now you got 3 rotations to do. So what I'll do is I'll fly down it and I'll slam on the brakes, let the bucket swing. So it's like a paintbrush. It'll drop water, and then I stay in one spot, and then I stop the water, and then when it comes back, I drop it again. And then when it comes back, I drop it again. So I'll do like 4 or 5 of those. So it's like a Picasso. You're painting.
No kidding.
Log. Yeah, so that's Picasso. We got hook shots where fire lines are never straight. Right. You can have a fire line that goes down and makes a 90-degree turn. Well, with a bucket, the more you do it, of course, you want to try to follow it. And you get a lot of practice. So you trail the line and you get the bucket to do a 90-degree drop, or you can do circles. If the fire line, the head's in front of it, you can come up one side and make the bucket do a whole circle and get all the way around in front of it and back. And there's quite a few drops I posted on my Facebook channel. You can see some of those. Yeah. You can drop really high and make it rain.
So we should mention that your channel.
Yep. Yes.
So people can find you.
Yeah. So I have a YouTube channel. It's under my name. It's Earl Watters, and it just says helicopter pilot. There's some cool videos of animal capture. We're mic'd up on some of them. Some of them we're not. There's videos of me flying in the jungle in Peru, doing rappel with the Forest Service, rappelling guys. I mean, there's videos, all kinds of videos on there, different work that I've done. And I mainly did that for my family. So I did that to show my family what I did. Yeah. And one of the videos has like 13 million views. I never expected that.
It's kind of crazy because I know the feeling, because it's like you like I started fooling around because I had nothing else to do. Yeah. Like I was like, I'm broken. I was in a cast for 6 months, and I'm like sitting there and I'm like, okay. And I'm like, and then you start having people like it, and then the comments, and some of you get comments that are asshole comments. Yeah. You get a few. There's just people, and I'm like, I'm amazed at the things they'll say online, and I'm like, you would never say that
face to face.
No, like the good old, like my dad grew up and raised us the same way. As said, gosh dang it, we'd go out behind the barn and settle the problem.
That's exactly right. And then you were buddies when you walked back when it was over.
Girls don't understand that. No. Have you noticed that?
No, yeah, they know.
Guys, we can fight and like have a meltdown and be like, okay, now we're good.
That's it. That's it. So yeah, and the Facebook's the same. So Facebook, I did just for my family.
Right.
And then through all these fires, I just started getting all these followers. And then what happened is why I started making videos. I would get so many questions, and they were all the same questions.
Right.
So I got tired of answering those questions. Not that I minded.
Right.
So I just started making videos that covered all of those topics. And then I noticed that I wasn't getting as many questions like that. So now I'm just trying to make videos. I got a lot of people asking me, hey, do a video on this. So I'm going to make a bunch of stuff coming up on my Facebook, and you can look me up.
And honestly, like, you're putting out content on something like, this is the first time I've been in a Chinook, and like I said, I've gone out to the fire lines. I've always been fascinated by it. I got to be in an Erickson air crane several years ago, which I thought was cool as shit.
Yep, that's a big machine too.
Oh my gosh! And then the bubble in the back where you can fly it from behind, like
aft seat. Yep.
Yeah, like it's kind of crazy. You look at the different aircraft, but like this aircraft, how old is this aircraft?
This is 1973, but we have one of our machines, 588, is 1962 or 63. It was in Vietnam. The airframe was in Vietnam. And it went from an A model to a B to a C, now it's a D. So the airframes just are the same with patches and structure work, but all of the components inside have been upgraded, wiring, we do that. It took a couple years with those aircraft in our hangar, just going through them, making them new. I mean, they almost had the new car smell when it came out.
Oh, wow.
When I flew 588, that's the one we're talking about, on a CAL FIRE contract 2 years ago in Chico. That was its first outing.
Okay.
Yeah, since we overhauled
So walk us through that too, because you were saying, so you're at the end of your stretch, you're off for...
Yeah, we do, I'm on a Forest Service contract, so we do a 12 on, 12 off contract all year long. So I come out for 12 days, and then when my 12 days are up, they fly me home for 12. So you don't get a full 12 days off. You travel home on your first day and back on your last day.
Do you swap aircraft, or do you stay with this aircraft?
I'm pretty much on this machine, but we do bounce around to helicopters to cover if guys get injured or sick or something's going on. You can cover other machines on your days off.
Okay.
But this is my helicopter this year, so I'm on this one particular machine.
Do you feel that the aircrafts have little differences in them? Like if you fly this one compared to the old one?
You feel little differences. Some of them have a little shutter where another one might not, and it's just that machine. Some feel really tight and connected, and some feel a lot more loose and wore out. Is kind of they're not wore out, but that's the feel. You have a couple pilots. You have a pilot that is a bookworm pilot, knows everything, and he's got all the knowledge, and he just flies the machine with that knowledge. And then you got a guy like me that I try to get the knowledge. I'm not the smartest guy, but I am a seat of the pants flyer. I do everything by feel. I feel it through my feet. I feel it through my butt. A lot of times I know what's happening prior to it happening just by what I'm feeling and intuition before I make inputs.
It's so crazy because, like, so in my industry, they talk about when you start out shoeing horses, it's like 90% like watching and learning and 10% feel. And then as you go on through your career, as you get further and further along, that swaps. You become more feel oriented. Yeah. You can just kind of look at something and go, oh, this is where it needs to be.
Yeah, it's intuition. You just know. It's that gut feeling.
And the guys that have that gut feeling, like when we ride horses, I have people that I used to train horses when I was in high school and coming into college. And I quit training horses because I can't teach people to ride. There are some people out there that don't have any feel. Yeah. They can't get on a horse and go, he's going to buck.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, they don't. And the same thing, I do a lot of instruction. So I teach guys and I'll introduce them to this aircraft. I'm teaching them to fly this. They know how to fly, but I may have guys that I can feel what's coming, and I'm like, it ain't going to like that. And I can tell them, but you got to let it happen so they can identify it or respond to it. But a lot of times I tell them, just don't argue with a helicopter because you're never going to win.
Kind of like a woman.
Exactly. Sorry, honey.
Isn't that kind of...
It is.
But we name machines a lot of times women.
Women, yeah. This is my mistress.
Yeah.
I leave home, I come out here, and she's good with it. I like to fly this, and it's a girl.
It's quite an aircraft, really. You get in here and you don't really understand, like just looking at it from the road, you do not understand how cool it is in here.
And what I get from almost everybody that comes to tour it, everybody says, "Oh my gosh, it's bigger than it looks from the ground."
Yeah.
The same way with the bucket. They go, the bucket looks so small when it's flying over, but when they stand in it and it's taller than, they can't get over how big it is. I mean, just the fuselage we're in here is over 50 feet. And then the tip of that aft rotor to the tip of the forward rotor is 98 feet, 10.5 inches. It's almost 100 feet. So, I mean, that's big. It's a big footprint, right?
And it is crazy, like, when you were like, oh, yeah, we just drive the truck in. And then it kind of, like, you wrap your head around what this thing can really do.
Yeah.
Like, and that's not a massive rig, but it's a 4-door rig.
Yeah. It's
with a trailer.
Yeah. It's not the full-side truck, but it's still a 4-door truck. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, this has been so cool, man. I can't thank you enough for doing this. My hope is that we'll actually do some more of this eventually.
Yeah, that'd be cool. If I come back, I'd love that.
Or I'll drive. I'm going to be traveling quite a bit this year, so if it works out. But thank you again for doing this. We'll go outside and run around the aircraft. You'll give us a tour. Yeah,
that'd be great. Yeah, and look me up on Facebook. It's just under Earl Watters.
Yep,
Watters
everybody check him out. He's amazing.
Yeah. Appreciate it, guys, and nice meeting you.
You too, brother. I'm going to walk us through the plane.
Yeah, so anyways, this is a CH-47. It's a military aircraft that we acquired through government auction. This particular one, you'll notice we've got the Australian flags on it.
Yeah.
And we call it Boomer, so it's got a kangaroo on it. The reason is because in 1973, when it was made, when Boeing made it, they sent it to Australia. So the Royal Australian Air Force had it. And it was there from 73 to 93. So it was in Australia for 20 years. So serving Australia Army. And it was a C model. So they had, in the 90s, they changed the C model to a D model. The upgrades were, better blades, bigger engines, more power. They also did a triple hook system, which we have on this, what they didn't have then. So the upgrade was to a D model. So it came back to the US in 93. And then the Army converted it to a D model, and then it went out to the Army National Guard in Hawaii with the hill climbers.
Really?
Yeah, so then it spent some time with the National Guard, and then they deployed to the Iraq War. So this was in, I want to say, 2009, 2010, and then I just recently found out it did a third tour in 2011. So after we acquired it in auction in 2014, we changed the name to November 401 Alpha Juliet, and that's what started its firefighting career. And then we hired a mechanic. He's a crew chief about a year or two ago, and when he saw the serial number of this aircraft, he realized he was on this in Iraq, and it had a crash, and he was standing in the doorway. They were flying on night vision goggles, and the dust, they kind of lost their position and orientation and hit the ground, kind of collapsed the landing gear, and he lost all his teeth in the doorway there because he wasn't strapped in. So then we take this helicopter all over the world fighting fire. So this one's been in South America, Chile, fighting fire, and recently I just got home. I spent 56 days with this helicopter in South Korea fighting fires.
And you were saying that because you don't fly that across the water.
That's correct. So we put it on a ship. We fly them up into Washington to one of the ports, put it on a ship, take the blades off. It takes 30 days to get there. And then we end up in Korea. We go to the docks where the ships come in, put the blades back on, and we fly them right off the docks over to the bases that we're at. We took 5 helicopters there this year from Billings Flying Service.
So that must be, especially like a 30-day wait, there must be a massive fire there then.
No, their fire season, it's not for one particular fire. Their fire season is February, March, and April.
Okay.
So we start the process in January. We're there at the end of January, assemble them, then we go out to the bases by, say, February 1st, and then we sit there from February, March, and April, just like we're doing here. It's their fire season, and we sit at the base 16 hours a day waiting on a fire call. And, we do that every single day we're there. The machines were there 3 months this year. And then when the fire season's over, we put it on a ship, comes back. We were here starting in June, back to the U.S. fighting fire. So we do that with Chile. We also have some possibilities of contracts in Australia. I have fought fire in Australia myself and Greece with a different helicopter, Skycrane helicopters.
I've seen the Skycranes. They're kind of cool.
Yep, flew those. I also spent some time in the Amazon jungle, away from fires, flying in Peru, and I did oil and gas work. We would do like a month on, month off down there in the jungle.
Really?
And with a sky crane. Yeah. So again, I've been doing this over 30 years, so I pretty much.
And you said, and how many hours do you have in this aircraft?
This particular helicopter, I only about 1,000 hours in this helicopter.
In Chinooks total?
In Chinooks total, yep. I've only been flying them for about 6 years.
Okay.
But the total time, I've got over 20,000 hours in helicopters.
Wow.
Yeah.
So walk us through just kind of, because I know nothing about the aircraft, like describe everything, explain how it works.
Okay, well, we'll just start in the back.
Okay.
So right above us here, you'll see this little tiny engine. This is what we call the APU. It's an auxiliary power unit. This, we have to start first prior to starting the engines. This has a generator on it. It's 20 kVA generator. That gives us power when we're sitting on the ground without the blades turning before we get the engines running. So we have electrical, so we can do some flight control checks. It also has a hydraulic pump on it, and it builds hydraulic pressure in our utility system, so we can test the flight controls. We can also use that pressure to start our engines. Now, our engines have hydraulic starters on them, so it takes 3,350 psi to get the main engine started. And then once the engines are running, the blades are turning, now we have hydraulic pumps on the transmissions, so we don't need that. We can shut that off. We have generators on there, hydraulic pumps. Now we're pretty much self-contained while it's turning. So if that does not start, we're dead in the water. Just can't even get the main engines running. Okay. The main engines are about 5,000, 1,600 horsepower each. So we have over 10,000 horsepower between the two engines. This machine here weighs about 23,000 pounds empty, and our max gross weight is 50,000 pounds. So we carry, just to give you an idea, on the sides of the helicopter outside, you'll see these pods that stick out. Those are our fuel tanks. We have 500 gallons on this side, 500 gallons on that side. We have a total of 1,028 gallons we carry, and the weight of that is 7,000 pounds. And we burn all of that in 2 hours. Wow. Yeah, it burns 50 pounds per minute. So every minute you're 50 pounds lighter. So to give you an idea, we plan it at every 20 minutes is 1,000 pounds while you're flying. Wow. So every hour is 3,000 pounds, and you're pretty much done in a little over 2 hours, and you have a reserve when you land. Okay. So it's really
so you run the outside tanks, and then you have a reserve tank that you've.
No, there's not a reserve. So there's 3 tanks on each side. Okay. We have 2 aux tanks, one in the front and back, and then a main tank. Okay. The main tank's job is to pump fuel from itself right to the engine on the left side. Now, all of the aircraft that have dual engines, the left side is number 1, right side is number 2. Okay. So that tank, all its job is to pump fuel to that number 1 engine. The tank in the center here is to pump directly to the number 2 engine. Those aux tanks pump into the main tank. Okay. So we pump them until they're empty right away. They're constantly pumping right when we take off, and we're burning fuel out of the main and replacing it. Once the auxes are empty, now we have a full main tank, and then we burn through that, and we leave a reserve in that. So we try to land with 1,000 pounds total on the ground. That's our 20-minute reserve that we're required by the FAA to have. So you have to plan your flight with an additional 20 minutes when you get there. Okay. So we always have that reserve. Right. Exactly. Okay. So right here in the center is where our hook hangs. This beam right here, to give you an idea, has a max gross weight of 26,000 pounds on that beam. So that's our main hook. So our long line's attached to this. This line we have on here right now, it's about 200 feet from the belly of the helicopter to the bottom of the bucket underneath us. So it's right around 200 feet. So we've got that external load hanging below us, and we can put up to 26,000 pounds on it. This hook, in the event of an emergency, say we're flying around, we fly in a lot of canyons with smoke, it's hard to see, there's a lot of wires. So if you were to snag this bucket on a wire, of course it would bring the helicopter down. So on one of my flight controls in my right hand, my pinky button, if I push that, it opens up this hook and allows the load to go away. Okay. So you can drop it. Exactly. We can pickle the load and fly away, without having a problem. There's also an emergency dump in case that doesn't work. There's an accumulator on that has 2,100 pounds of nitrogen. And when you hit that button overhead, there's a button overhead in our cockpit. It'll get rid of that nitrogen and that accumulator, and it'll open the hook. And then if we had a crew chief in the back here, laying here. There's a handle right here, you'll see, and that's ran on a cable, and he can manually pull that. So you have 3 ways of getting rid of that hook in an emergency if you have that problem, if you have somebody back here.
Do you fly with a crew chief?
No, we don't. Typically, we'll fly with just the pilot and the co-pilot. And then if, for instance, if I'm working a fire right here, I'll just fly out of here, work the fire, come in here for fuel. We have a 9,000 gallon tanker right there that's got fuel, and we'll just fuel out of here. Now, if I'm going to fly far away, for instance, here north of Lewiston, I would probably fly myself out of fuel and then go to Lewiston for fuel at the airport. So then I would take my crew chief with me, so he's with me when I start and shut down. Anytime you shut down the aircraft and start it, we like to have a crew chief with us.
Okay.
There's things that he has to watch outside for starting and shutting down. So those would be the circumstances where we'd have a crew chief with us. Or we've also used people in the back, our crew chiefs, when it's incredibly smoky and the visibility's bad. I'll use someone else for an extra set of eyes to watch for other helicopters, other obstacles, wires, stuff like that. We do that only for safety.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's a question. I read a book called To the Limit with, it's about a Vietnam pilot, and he was flying Vietnam. Air is way heavier there, and he was flying the original Hueys that were underpowered. And he said when he flew them here in the U.S., he didn't have near as many problems. But when he got over there, he had to learn almost all over because of the difference.
Well, you do. Of course, the lower you are in elevation, the heavier the air is, the more dense the air is. So your engine performance is better, rotor blade performance is better. Everything about the aircraft flies better at sea level. And of course, just like a car. And then the higher you go up in elevation, the performance is less because the air is less dense. So now your engine is struggling to get air to give you power. The rotor blades do not have the same amount of air to give you the lift you need. So performance is way down. So that's why we carry 2 buckets for that reason. We use a really big bucket for low elevations. That's our 2,650 gallon bucket. And then we have a 2,000 gallon bucket on here that we use for high elevation.
I gotcha.
So we've been fighting fire here the last couple of days at about 8,000 feet in elevation. So I'm able to use the 2,000 gallon bucket because I couldn't possibly fill the 2,650 at that elevation. And then we'll just go up to the cockpit here in the front. So this is more like kind of resembles an airplane cockpit. Boeing made this aircraft, so there's a lot of stuff overhead. And I'll put you in the seat there if you want. I'm going to put you in the left seat.
Okay.
So what you're going to do is you're going to step over that panel in the middle. Okay. You're going to go over with your right foot first. Okay. And then if you look at my foot here, you're going to go over the right foot, and then you're going to go like this with your leg through that cycle. Okay. And then I'll climb in the right seat and talk to you. Okay. And watch your head overhead. There you go. Right. And then bend your knee. Yep, just like that. Perfect. I'll sit right here. All right. And then we'll kind of talk a little bit about what's going on where you're at the seat. Okay. If you want, I'll take the camera.
Okay. And you point.
Yeah, and I'm going to just kind of talk to you a little bit and tell you kind of what we do. Okay. So if you put your feet on the pedals. Okay. That's going to be pretty much the flying position. Your right hand goes on the cyclic right there. Okay. Exactly. And your left hand go over that belt you see there and grab that thrust lever. Right. So now your hand's on that. Now slide your butt a little more to the left. Yep, a little more to the left. Now that belt you see right there, you're going to lay on that with your ribs. So go ahead and lean way out. A little more. There you go. Now that's the typical flying position. You're leaning out, head down. Now you can watch your bucket below you, so you can keep it from dragging in the trees or hitting wires. And then that's your target. You're watching for that. You're also watching for guys on the ground you're working with, so you don't drop water on them. So at the end of the day, you'll fly 8 hours leaning out with your head down, and your neck is just destroyed.
So you've because it's fascinating. So because I shoot horses for a living, so I spend most of my day bent over, head down, and you pretty much do a similar position.
Exactly. I have a helmet on, so now you have the weight of the helmet. And some jobs you'll go out a month on, month off, so you're working an entire month with your head out, looking down with a helmet. And at the end of the day, you get out, you're still leaning in that position. So over, flying over 30 years, I have a lot of degenerative damage to my spine and my neck, and so I've got a lot of neck problems because of it. Not so many back problems, but more neck problems because of it, and it's just because of that position.
So do you use like a massage therapist or anything like that?
I got to kind of talk my wife into rubbing.
Because a couple years back, I got so bad, like my hand was just
Would get numb?
Yeah, and so I started going to like a medical massage. Changed my life.
Well, I can have a chiropractor, but I'll do the same. I get my fingers start to go numb because of the problems in the neck, the nerves. So yeah, when I start getting my hands start going numb, I have to have kind of some adjustments. But I kind of deal with it, and it's not too bad. But
so you fly with a co-pilot?
Yes, correct. There's two of us in here.
Okay.
And that's because the aircraft requires that, a pilot and a co-pilot.
Right. And so when you're dumping, so would this would be the captain's?
Correct, yeah. So the person flying the fire operation is in the left seat. So you can lean out, you can see everything. Now, while you're leaning out, of course, you can't see any of these gauges. So you have a co-pilot. So I always include my co-pilot. I have him pull my power for me instead of me pulling it myself. So he's watching the gauges. We have 100% power available on our torque, and I always use about 90%. So I have 10% as a safety margin.
Right.
So I lean out, I'll set the bucket in the water. Once it fills up, if it's in a lake, I'll pull it up. And I say, all right, you have the power. He will grab the thrust lever. He'll pull power to 90%. And he'll say, there, I've got your power. And now he's holding it while I'm flying it out over the trees. Once I'm clear of all the obstacles and obstructions, I'll go ahead and sit up. And then I take the power back. Now I'll fly it and do the drop. Now, it's a little different if we go into a creek. That bucket there doesn't require a lake to get water. We can get water between 12 and 18 inches deep.
Wow.
It has a pump in the bottom, and I'll show you that. So you'll set that in the water in a small creek and hold it standing straight up. So that's it's a little tricky to do, because you don't want, if you take too much power out, it'll tip over and you'll spill all the water you just pumped in.
Right.
And if you pull a little too much, you'll yank the pump up out of the creek and it'll stop pumping. So it's a very delicate balance for that first 5 to 10 seconds to get some water in it and wait. So when that happens, I'll set that in. There's a little red switch right here, and the co-pilot will push that button, and that's the pump. Okay. There is an electric line that runs down that long line to that pump, and that's what turns the pump on. There's also a line that runs to the door at the bottom of the bucket, and that allows us to open and close it. And on your left hand, and if you look here, this one has the same.
Oh, okay, cool.
But there's the same exact stick as over there. This little button right here, if you push forward on it, that opens the bucket, and if you pull back, you can close. Now, if you just go for a second and let go, the bucket will open and stay in that position. So I can do a long trail drop if I barely crack it, or I can hold it for basically 3 seconds and it opens all the way. And now all of your weight, that particular bucket is about 18,000 pounds full. So now you've got 18,000 pounds of water coming down instantly.
Wow.
Or crack it open and at, say, 60 knots, this runway in front of us, you could probably fly down that runway at 50, 60 knots and trail water all the way down it. If you're just barely cracking it out.
Okay. Wow.
So there's a lot of, you have a lot of capability. So whether you're in a grass fire and you need a long trail drop, or if you've got a spot drop on a tree, sometimes we'll knock big snags down by dropping water on them, and then the firefighters can cut them up once they're on the ground.
Oh, really?
If you hit them hard enough with water.
Really?
And you're good enough with the target acquisition.
So
or a lot of times they'll cut them down as well.
I heard a story couple years back from a buddy. He flew for Jim Pope Jr., I think it was. He's out of Lewiston. I want to say Little Bird, but that's not what he flies.
Okay.
But he does I think you also do it, down in the desert, the
animal capture?
Yes, the animal catcher.
Yeah, I do a lot of that.
So he does some of that. Anyway, he was saying that they were up on a fire somewhere in northern Idaho, and the military, the National Guard came in, and all the stuff that you're describing, they can't do it.
That is correct, yeah. So all of the military helicopters, they don't have this bubble window that we have. So they don't have the ability of leaning out the window and looking down. It's called vertical reference.
Right.
So they won't use a long line like this. They'll basically belly hook that bucket right below the helicopter. And then they have a crew chief who lays in that hook well, and he has the button to drop the water. So he will lay in that hole while the pilot flies where he thinks is going to be over the target. And then there's there could be a delay between communications, but they get pretty good at it. And then he'll line up and say they're over the fire. Once he's got it in sight in the hook well, he'll hit the button. So yeah, they tend to don't have the ability to be incredibly as efficient or accurate just because of that.
Yeah.
But I have seen some Army guys and Guard guys do fairly well at what they do.
I guess on that fire, he said they weren't accomplishing. They miss the target every time.
No, I wouldn't say every time, but they definitely, if they had the ability to look down and be able to do the vertical reference themselves, I think it completely changes the ball. So
because you're taking into account wind,
everything,
the
height. So everything changes. If you've got strong wind and you've got a really high elevation, tricky terrain. If the bucket's really high above the trees, when you drop it with strong wind, it's going to blow completely away from your fire. So if you go really fast, the water comes out even lighter. So the faster you go, the higher you go, the more drift you're going to have. So the lower and slower you go, the less drift that you're going to have. So it depends on how much the smoke's laying over, how much you adjust. And then, of course, after you make your first drop, if you've overshot or undershot, you can always adjust for the next one. And then you get pretty good at gauging the wind. But that gets really tricky in really strongy wind conditions.
Does the heavy smoke affect the performance of the aircraft as well?
No, it doesn't, but it affects our ability to get into places. Of course, visibility is bad. We're not going to go blasting in there because then you're going to lose sight of your bucket. You could potentially run it into the trees below you. So, we tend to stay out of the heavy smoke, out of the superheated air from the fire. But there are times when it's just, there's so much smoke. Like the fire we had, the Gwen fire recently, there was so much smoke, we were pretty much in the smoke all the time. And you're just vertically, the only way I could fly was by looking down. I could see down and see the houses and see wires straight down. If you look straight ahead of you, it was just smoke everywhere. So,
because I was, that one was pretty close to where I live. And with the wind the way that it was, we had high winds that first day. I think it was when it kicked off about noon. I think.
It was very strong. Yeah, I was the first helicopter on the fire. I think I was the first aircraft on the fire.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we were there. There was nobody there. I was working with the IC on the ground. We were the first guys there. It was right at the end of the day on that first day. So we got one cycle in right before dark. And then, of course, we were back out the next morning. But we were the first aircraft.
I have never been on the flight side. I've only been on the ground side. I've helped fight a little bit of fire there. When the wind's like that fire just runs so fast.
It does. I've seen fire lines run almost 90 miles an hour. If the wind's blowing that strong and there's fuel ahead of it, it'll that fire will run. It's incredible. I was in Australia during Black Saturday, the real bad fires in Australia, and some of those fires were running 50, 60 miles an hour across the gum trees.
Is there much you can do at that point, or is it kind of a
at that point you turn your technique instead of trying to stop the fire to more structure protection and people protection. A lot of people are trying to get out of the cities. They've been evacuated, so you'll work on trying to do structure protection around those houses or where cars are riding out along the highway. You pretty much, with the amount of water we carry and something's moving that fast, you're really not going to stop it. You might be able to slow it down. So you'll see some of our tactics change, like some of the videos I put out on the Gwen fire. I knew it was coming to these houses. I didn't even worry about the fire line itself. I just spent a good 30, 45 minutes just soaking everything around all the houses. I was soaking all the vegetation, which is something that I try to tell people, try to cut that vegetation back from your houses. Don't have big trees around your house. But I soaked all that. We even made everything rain over the top of the houses. We tried to soak everything we could ahead of it. And a lot of it worked because some of it came and burnt around some of the places. And then when it would get to the house, we would just go ahead and do direct firefighting right on the house. And there's a few videos that I posted.
I was talking to, I think he was on the Kendrick and he was on the Gwen. I don't know if he had command of the Gwen. He's one of the tribal guys, runs the tribal firefighting group. But anyway, one of the issues that they had on the ground is a lot of those houses on the hillsides, they put their septic tanks right in the driveway, and you can't bring water trucks in because you'll punch through the top. So they make them indefensible from the ground. And I don't think people realize, they want their shrubs and everything to look pretty, and they don't think about.
No, they don't. And we see it all the time. Most of the houses over all the years I've seen that have burnt or that were not able to save were just surrounded with big trees. So the trees catch on fire, catch everything on the house on fire. But most areas that are clear of vegetation have a lot better chance of surviving than something. So definitely keep the...
Well, 'cause it's a little bit, it comes down to like, there's different, they classify fuel by time, I think is what I've been told.
Yep, correct, yep.
So like
Depends
grass
on
is like...
It's a really light fuel. Heavy fuels would be your high, carnifers and stuff like that. They're, they call them 1 hour fuels, 3 hour fuels, that kind of stuff. Yep. But your grass is okay, but your big heavy fuels, those are...
What has been probably your favorite place to fight fire, if you could pick a spot?
I've been all over the world fighting fire, and believe it or not, I just like to be in the United States. I'm a U.S. citizen. I love America. I'm all about everything that, where we came from, and I believe in it, and I just believe in, taking care of our people. But I've spent a lot of time in other countries, and I don't look at that any different when I'm there. I still do the same thing. I enjoy what I do. I have a great passion for it, and I really like that I can make a difference. If we can save one house or put one fire out, that makes all the difference to me. So, but I really I like to be in the U.S. I've been all over the United States. The people are amazing here. In Idaho, my gosh, while we were in Lewiston, we had the post office in Julietta. They came out, little kids brought us thank you cards.
Oh, wow.
We've got them hanging up in the trailer. I have to show them to you. We got muffins brought to us, cookies they made to us. I think I've gained like 30 pounds on this. The control tower in Lewiston brought us pizza one day down there. And they came and went through the helicopter with us. And everybody's reached out. Everybody's coming out, seeing the helicopter. The little kids are coming out. We got stickers. We're giving the little kid, we have little tattoos we bought to put on kids' arms. And they get little Chinook tattoos. And even here in Grangeville, same thing. We had 2 big old loaves of zucchini huckleberry bread, and every day we get, someone brings us something. The support from the people is just amazing here.
It's kind of cool to see. I think that's one of the things we've lost. If we've lost anything in the United States, it's the sense of community, and it's cool to see it.
Yeah, I don't like to see us divided. Right? We're dangerous when we're all united. And I think it's incredible that everybody is like that,
So if you can, let's go walk through the bucket. So those are the tanks on the side, right?
Yeah. You want me to talk to those?
Yeah, if you want. Just kind of walk us through the outside of the aircraft.
Exactly. So the gray area that you see on the bottom there, those poke out, those are our fuel tanks. So we have 3 tanks on those. We have a 118-gallon ox tank in the back. We have a 278-gallon tank in the middle. And then on the front, it's 122 gallons. Okay. And those ox tanks pump in the mains, and then the mains pump to the engines. So there's 500 gallons of fuel on there and 500 on the other side, and that's what's gone in 2 hours. And they just feed that engine. But we carry 7,000 pounds of fuel. So
let's take a look at your logo up here.
Oh yeah, so that's our Boomer logo. Again, we talked about the history of it. It's been its first 20 years of life in Australia, so we've kind of kept that history. We did find during of this history stuff, some pilots that flew this aircraft reached out. It gave me goosebumps when I was reading this stuff. It talked. They flew the machine in Iraq, and they sent me the nose art from this helicopter when it was in Hawaii. It's a hula girl, and it's really cool. We're going to do some T-shirts and call it Vintage Boomer.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah, we want to do that. But it was really cool reading it, getting goosebumps about some of the missions it did and stuff. Was just incredible.
Now,
I can talk about that later.
With the hole in the bubble, do you have issues with smoke coming in?
No. So the reason we have the hole primarily is airflow, as well as we do a lot of construction work in the winter. And if you're flying in the rain, all the water gathers at the bottom, and it makes it blurry to see through, and you can't see.
Okay.
So with it cut out, you're able to look down through the, unobstructed. But primarily it's airflow, because this thing is so hot. If you imagine yourself driving in your car, turn your heater as high as it'll go, turn the fan as high as it'll go, roll up all your windows, and that's how hot it is inside the cockpit. The transmission over our head has a big cooler on it, and that cooler's blowing air into the cockpit. It's just hot like your heater, and it's unbelievably hot. It's usually 20 to 30 degrees hotter in there than it is outside, and I am not kidding about that. on real hot fires. But that's our logo. And then we have a few World War II kills here. These are things that the machine has blown over. Now, take a look at those outhouses you see way out there. You see how far they are?
Yeah.
So one of these on this door happened to be here. These outhouses were between us and this building right over here. And we told them we'd come into land that, hey, those outhouses are a little close to the pad. They said, no, they're strapped down. They'll be all right. Well, of course, we landed. The wind was blowing this way, so our rotor wash blew into those outhouses, flipped them over. So anytime we blow anything over, we kind of get...
we got a cow.
We have a cow and a calf. That came from a dirt tank in Arizona. We were coming in. Some cows ran from the pond. This cow and calf decided to stay there. When we came out of the water with a full bucket, of course, the rotor wash now is even stronger because we're lifting 50,000 pounds as opposed to 30,000 pounds. So the rotor wash hit the cow. She kind of toppled over the calf. They both rolled, got up, and they ran off. They were okay, but we toppled the cow. And then the golfer was really funny, too. That happened in Tucson, Arizona. We use ponds and golf courses a lot when the fire's really close to a golf course. So we had someone who thought they were just going to golf through. The Forest Service was at the dip site and told the gentleman, hey, the helicopter's coming in. Nope, I'm golfing through. I don't care if he's there. We came out of the dip, and, of course, the rotor wash, he rolled. The ball kind of rolled down the fairway. And I did get a hold of the Forest Service on the radio, and I told him, I said, contact the guy and let him know he does not get a mulligan on that. He has to play from where it is. That's one stroke. So I was not going to give him a par on that hole for that. But we got a golfer for that. Yeah. Cool. And
So let's talk about your bucket.
All right. So at the end of the long line here, this one is just under 200 feet right to the bottom of the bucket. The long line is 150. You got about 30 feet or so. So we're around 185 to 190 or so to the bucket, somewhere around there. Our radar altimeter, when we hit around 185 to 190, the bucket's just touching the water. So I just say we're just under 200 feet. The bucket is a pretty cool design. So we've modified the bucket here at Billings to incorporate what we call power fill. So power filling is this pump on the bottom. This standoff here is manufactured here at our hangar. They make this attached to the bucket. This allows us, if the water in the creek is only about 12 to 18 inches, that's all we need. We can set this in the water standing up and hold it. This pump right here enters the water electrically. I showed you in there that red button. The co-pilot hits that pump turns on. We're power filling the bucket from the bottom full in about a minute. So 2,000 gallons in a minute.
Wow.
And it's full. And then once it's full, of course, we fly off. Now, if we have a lake and the lake's deep enough, we just set it in the water. Of course, it tips over, sinks, and then we just pull it out full. And you're in and out in like 5 to 10 seconds. So you're pretty
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It doesn't take long. Now, I've learned a trick. If you just set it in the water, it tips over and it floats a little. Sometimes the rotor wash will catch it. It pops out like a parachute. And it'll float. It's not very long, but it'll float for a minute and then sink. So I found if we set it in the water, I tell the co-pilot it's in the water, he hits the pump. That pump right there sucks the bucket under like almost instantly.
Oh,
and
wow.
so now I can be in and out in, 10 seconds or so.
And you have 2 buckets.
We have 2 buckets, correct. Again, the smaller bucket for higher elevation. This is 18,000 pounds full. And then our bigger bucket is a 2,650 gallon bucket, and we use that in lower elevations, and that's just under 22,000 pounds full.
Wow.
So it's pretty heavy. So water's, about 8 pounds per gallon.
Wow.
If you look at the gate here, that's the gate. It's open. So I fly with it in the open position because if not, it's a parachute.
Okay.
So we can fly from here to a fire 120 to 140 knots with this bucket with that Chinook. It doesn't really mind that bucket being down there. Typically on a long flight, you can do 120 pretty easy with the bucket hanging. Without the bucket, of course, you have a V&E limit on the aircraft, but this doesn't slow you down.
Wow.
That bucket with it wide open, of course, everything goes, or, we crack it open and we can trail drop all the way down the runway if you had to. And if you come around the front, so it's in the open position here. You know, it stays popped open. To give you an idea, with our 2650, it's taller than I am, so it's about it's probably about this high. It's above my head, in the same diameter, so it's considerably bigger. And then you'll notice those lead weights. You see those weights on one side?
Yeah.
Those are there, so when you set it in the water, it allows it to tip over quicker to one side. It always falls to that side to sink. Yeah.
So when you're, like, let's say you're going to a different fire, whatever, how do you transport the other bucket? Is it put on a truck? Or?
Okay, yeah. So locally, we'll always ferry from here to the fire.
Okay.
Now, under FAA regulations, that's Part 133. It falls under specific rules that we can't overfly communities and stuff with this bucket hanging under the helicopter. This whole apparatus you see here is about 1,100 pounds. So if it were to fall off accidentally, it could go through the house, you know, could injure someone or possibly kill somebody. So we're not allowed to fly over communities ferrying to and from fires. So, for instance, if we got an order to go to California, we'll pack up the bucket, everything inside. What we do is we put this bucket on a trailer. We hook the trailer up to that black truck over there, which I'll show you, and we drive the truck into the back of the helicopter with the trailer, and then we transport the whole truck, trailer, everything to California. We land, we can back out, hook the bucket up. Now we have transportation, because our support equipment's usually a day or two behind us on far flights, and that's how we do long flights. Now, if I'm flying locally and we have a lot of communities, for instance, Lewiston, I had everybody watch me go and come out to the south. So I had to go around all the houses with the bucket, so we're not overflying. Now, if we're in a community that is burning and it's on fire, obviously we're going to be over the houses getting water and dropping water. So there are exceptions to that under those kind of circumstances, if you're actually working in a community where you're dropping water in there. But we don't overfly highways when cars are coming. We've got to time it. We look down the highway and say, okay, there's nobody here, we can cross, so in case it falls off. Same way coming in and out of the dip, we get a lot of people that like to watch us, and it's really irritating for me when everybody's in my departure route, because once I get going, it's momentum and inertia. I have to get it going, and it's really hard to stop and change directions when someone gets in front of me. So if you see a helicopter going in a certain way, you can get as close as you want, just avoid that area. Another thing is on lakes, we get a lot of boats that come out and watch us, and we don't mind you watch, but when we get water and leave, and you go where we were and you see us go somewhere else, that means we don't want you around. We don't mind you watching, but it can be dangerous. With the rotor wash, we've blown boats against the sides of shores, people get too close. I mean, there's a lot of wind with this. So,
yeah, for sure.
We do not mind looking, taking pictures. I mean,
just try to stay back.
Exactly. So if you see the helicopter trying to avoid you, just kind of help out and just kind of stay away from it. Sometimes we'll have sirens, and we can hit sirens to kind of warn people. So if you do hear a siren, that means you're just too close. Just back up a little. Give us time, because again, there's a lot of heavy stuff.
Didn't somebody get hit the other day? Actually, I seen something it was a lake deal, and there was a boat that got.
Could have been.
I thought I saw something.
Could have been. We've had vehicles got hit. Fire engines on fires have been hit by buckets, and it caves the windows in. If we were to drop a full bucket on a car, it'll just crush the roof, blow out all your windows. I mean, there's a lot.
Do you ever drop retardant, or is
we do? So they'll set up a retardant plant right next to the fire. What people don't realize is they see these big VLATs come out and drop this massive amount of retardant on the fire, and they're working the fire. Well, if they have retardant really close to the fire, we can put out about 2,000 gallons max, because retardant's usually heavier than water, so it's 10 pounds per gallon. So you'll usually do maybe 2,000 gallons of retardant near the end of your cycle, but we can do that every 5 minutes if we have a retardant plant. So we can put out 2 and 3 times the amount of retardant in an 8-hour day, because of the amount of time it takes.
So you're just going left.
We're not going to do
making more trips.
Correct.
Faster.
We're not going to do as long of a trail, and our trails aren't going to be as wide. We're a lot more accurate, pinpoint accurate, but we can put out a lot of retardant with the Chinook. It's pretty fast. Even all Type 1 helicopters, the Sky Cranes, the Chinooks. I mean, they're in a fire with a close water source, they're going to put out a lot of water. people don't realize that. And retardant too, you can. And retardant's a lot harder because they make a tank, and the tank is just a little bit bigger than this bucket. So now you're threading the needle 200 feet, and your rotor wash comes down, that 200-mile-an-hour wind hits it, and of course, you'll go in and out of there 20 or 30 times perfect, and as soon as the news media gets there, or your friends and they're filming it, you get the old toilet ringer, and of course then you get the great job, Watters, I saw you on CNN do the old toilet ringer. Yeah, but you didn't see that 30 before that. It was perfect. So every now and then, it's challenging. Every time you come in, it's different, right?